Good day, guys. Here we are today in sunny St. Martin and visiting with another one of my good friends here I've known for several years. This is Roger Boutel, and that's Roger with a D.
Yes.
But Roger's been here for a number of years, and he's another one like the rest of us who used to live on mainland and gave it all up for something different. And he's got an amazing story too, done some really cool stuff down here. So I thought you guys find it interesting to meet him and to hear a little bit about what he's done in the past, what he's doing now. And so Roger, where did you start out? I mean, you were telling me it was like 30, 40 years ago, I think.
It was 1975, and I just spent 4 years in business college in upstate New York, and I just wanted to go to the Caribbean and dive for a couple years. So I sent out 300 resumes, and I got 2 offers, one on a boat and one at a hotel in Antigua. Okay. So I took the one in Antigua. The owner of the hotel dropped the whole water sports program on me. I took out snorkeling trips, taught sunfish sailing, taught scuba diving. Hadn't hardly done any of these things myself before, but now I'm a teacher. Got paid for it, got 3 meals a day. Spent 6 months in Antigua, and then one of the previous people that I had contacted here at St. Martin had just gotten the water sports concession at the largest hotel at the time was called Mullet Bay Resort. That was 1976. Okay. And they said, would you reconsider coming up here? So I come up for a couple of days, and they take me out sailing and scuba diving and wine and dine me and said, this is it, you got a job if you want it. I was a NAUI instructor at the time, so by that time I got certified as NAUI. And I said, well, where's the dive boat? And they said, well, we really don't have a budget for a dive boat. So what we're going to do is we're going to bus people over in our Volkswagen bus, and Freddie the fisherman is going to take us out on the French side. Okay, so I said, so we did that for 2 weeks. Did that?
Yeah.
I said, why don't I bring in a dive boat, a proper dive boat, and we'll actually have a dive shop going here. So I brought in a 25-foot Mako, which was the first dive boat on St. Martin, 1976. After that, I just got stuck here. Never left.
Never went back to General Electric.
Never went back.
Anybody else? No more business management.
No.
Diving.
But it was sort of funny. The dive shop, we were right in the middle of Mullet Bay Beach. I'm talking, the shop was on the middle of the beach, one of the nicest beaches in the entire Caribbean. I mean, you wake up to that in the morning. I lived on my boat over in the lagoon, right on the other side of the golf course. I had a 36-foot Egg Harbor power boat that I lived on, that I recovered from a hurricane and restored it. Walked to work in the morning across the golf course. It was a life of Riley. It was sweet. It was sweet. One thing led to another. This guy comes down from Florida, a salesman, wants to sell me these T-shirts to sell in the dive shop. I go, he says, the line's called Caribbean Soul T-shirts. I go, I don't know, what's that all about? It's this by this singer, Jimmy Buffett. I'm from upstate New York. I never heard of Jimmy Buffett in my life. Yeah. He goes, yeah, he's getting really popular up in Florida, and we've got this line of T-shirts. And at that point, they're putting all the lyrics, you know, Cheeseburger in Paradise, Margaritaville, why don't we get drunk and screw, putting all the lyrics on the T-shirts. Yeah. So we put them in, I said, okay, I'll take a few dozen and try them. Well, they flew out the door. We sold everything out the first week because these divers were huge Jimmy Buffett fans, right?
Oh, wow.
So
put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, so I go, well, this is good. We're selling some T-shirts here now. This is a lot easier than taking people out scuba diving and they're throwing up all over your boat and everything, you know? So Jimmy Buffett's living over in St. Bart's on his boat called Euphoria 2. Yeah. So I said, I got to meet this guy, you know? So I go over there one day. Within the course of 2 days, I met my future ex-wife. I say with great affection, we were together for 23 years, and she introduced me to Jimmy one night. And I told Jimmy how well his T-shirts were selling over in St. Martin. And I said, who's selling your T-shirts here in St. Bart's? He goes, nobody. I said, what? Here you are, sitting on your boat, writing all these cool songs. He's written 2 books while on the boat already, and nobody's selling your T-shirts over there. So I said, we got to do something about that. So I opened up the Black Swan Boutique, and started selling Jimmy's T-shirts over there. And then one thing led to another. He got famous. He got rich. I sold a few Jimmy Buffett some gear, you know, for about 20 years. And at one point, I had 5 stores selling his line of merchandise. So first it was Black Swan Boutique. Then the next store was called Last Mango in Paradise, so which are now no longer in existence. But you know, things move on. So now I'm in the real estate business. So my partner Corinne and I opened a real estate company called Paradise Found Real Estate. And that's it in 5 minutes, my whole life for 39 years.
There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's cool.
Yeah, there's a few parts in between.
But for those of you that don't know, this is how I met Roger and Corinne a few years ago, was in the real estate business, because I was, of course, doing video productions and making professional commercials for all the upscale real estate in the areas, and they had a few of them that they wanted some made up for, so we did a few other listings. We did, well, ironically, one was called Margaritaville, or no, Margarita what?
Villa Margarita.
Villa Margarita.
Was the first one we did, yeah, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then we did another one, Villa Greco. We did that one, and then we did a third villa, all in the $1 million to $2 million range. So getting back to my first love, of scuba diving while I came to St. Martin. Got some very interesting shipwrecks on St. Martin.
Yeah, I remember you were showing me. You got some artifacts from some of these wrecks too. Huh?
Yeah, the most famous one we had a British warship sink just 2 miles right off behind my back here, 2 miles offshore, sank in 1801. It was a British warship called the HMS Proselyte. What's some history there, boy? There's some history there. She was carrying 32 cannon on board. And back when I started diving on it in 1976, it was still virgin territory because very few people had dived on it. So I was taking out sometimes 2 or 3 dives a day. And every time I'd go out, I'd find a different little hot spot around the shipwreck. It was usually buried in a couple feet of sand. Tons and tons of these musket balls, these lead musket balls they use for shot. And they were in these wooden kegs, and after 200 years, of course, all the wood's rotting away, and there'd be these big piles of these lead balls, but they'd be a foot or two underneath the sand. So I'd sit there for a couple minutes. I knew where these piles of lead musket balls were, and get a couple divers around me, and I'd be going like this with the sand, and they couldn't understand what I was doing. All of a sudden, you see these lead musket balls come into view. They could have been gold coins, Rick. We see the look on the diver's face, and they said, "Can we have some?" I said, "Yeah." They'd each take a couple and put them in their pockets. We'd get back. They were so happy. They were so happy. So I collected quite a few artifacts the first 5 years I was there. And I had a lot of respect for the archaeological history of the wrecks and everything. So what I collected, I gave to the local museum on Front Street down in Phillipsburg, the St. Martin Museum. So they have most of the artifacts that I collected from the HMS Proselyte. But I've got a few little pieces. I've got a pistol, which about 85% of the wood is still intact on this little pistol. Unbelievable. After 200 years, imagine underwater, because with the teredo worms and everything, usually there's no wood left. There's nothing left of the shipwreck except of the Proselyte, except for the ballast stone and the cannons and the anchors and things like that. Wow. I found a few coins over the years, mostly just personal coins that were in, the sailor's pocket or in a ditty bag or something like that. My favorite is I've got a little, well, you get you a picture of it, a little spyglass, about 8 inches long, a brass spyglass, which the captain could keep in his pocket, and then check out the surrounding islands and watch for all those pirates coming in. So I've got some really nice things from there. So, and then we got some other shipwrecks over the years. The government in cahoots with local dive shops have sunk several wrecks, freighters and things like that after cleaning all the oil and the batteries and everything out of them, and some good dive sites. So the Black Swan, with the name of the boutique, the Black Swan Boutique, came from a 100-foot teak ketch that burned and sank off St. Martin here. And I did not know the owner at the time. His name was Captain Crunch. Great name for a captain, Captain Crunch.
Sounds like a history
who
there.
became, that's a whole nother story. Captain Crunch and I became best of friends. I'm godfather to one of his sons. And anyways, make a long story short, he owned the boat. It was the first dive charter boat in St. Martin. He brought it in 1975, 1974. It burned and sank right out here in Simpson Bay. It was a hazard of navigation because it was such shallow water. So the insurance company paid off Captain Crunch, and my partners and I in the dive shop, we bought the wreck from the insurance company for $1. But we had 6 months, we had to remove the wreck because it was only in 20 feet of water. It was a hazard of navigation for any ships coming in. Turns out the ship was the Black Swan. It was all teak planking, solid teak. Teak planking was 2 inches thick. The teak frames are about 18 inches square. It was massive, so she burned to the waterline, and then everything else sank. So what we did is we cut up sections of the teak hull underwater, and we floated with 55-gallon drums. We made a raft, sank the raft, put sections of the teak hull on the raft, floated the barrels, brought it over to the beach there with a backhoe, and then put sections of the Black Swan into the back of a truck, and we took it down to the dive shop on Mullet Bay Beach. And then we set them up inside the dive shop. We propped them up, put glass shells in between the frames, and put our Hawaiian Tropic suntan lotion there, and some Kodak film here, and some sunglasses and stuff over there, and that became the Black Swan Boutique. What we've done is we've set, with all this nautical antiques I collected over the years, I'm all for getting it out there in the public where someone can see it and appreciate the history of these different ships, whether it's the HMS Proselyte or the Black Swan. The Black Swan's got some great, wonderful history. So what we've done out at one of the IGY marinas out here at Ile de Sol, we've set up a museum out there at the bar restaurant. So, and we have a whole section of the Black Swan. I've got original blueprints from the Black Swan when she was built in Australia. I've got photographs of it before she burned. I've got various bits and pieces. I've got the bronze steering pedestal from the Black Swan, which is a massive piece of work, unbelievable. And that's there on display there, Ile de Sol, out at the marina there.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, it's right around the corner from me. I'm just staying at the Simpson Bay Marina Yacht Club there now. Ile de Sol's where I was last year for most of the season.
but speaking of history lesson,
Okay.
there's one thing I got to get straight because it's bothered me for 30 years. I've been to so many bars and restaurants in the Caribbean, Florida Keys, even South Florida,
Yeah.
the last 40 years that claim that this is the bar where Jimmy wrote Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to tell you the story. This is a true story now, Rick. I'm not making this is a true story. This is from Jimmy's mouth to me. This is a true story. Jimmy was sailing from Key West to the BVI, as you know very well, to Tortola on his boat Euphoria 2 with his captain, Groovy Gray. Where do these guys get these names? Huh? Why don't they just stick with Roger with a D or something? Groovy and Crunch and Jimmy were sailing the boat down to the British Virgin Islands. And after 8 long days at sea, Jimmy was just dying for a cheeseburger, just a cheeseburger. They sail into Road Town in Tortola, which you know very well.
Yeah.
Go to the first restaurant, and as Jimmy tells me, he had the worst cheeseburger he's ever had in his life, but it tasted so good after 8 days out at sea. And he said, this could be a good song here, Cheeseburger in Paradise. So he started scribbling out the lyrics for Cheeseburger in Paradise. Meanwhile, he and Groovy sailed down to St. Bart's, where Jimmy ended up settling for many years. And he wrote Cheeseburger in Paradise while he was there. And he met the owner of La Select Bar, which is a famous bar, been there for 60 years in St. Bart's. Met the owner, Mario Staccoburo, just turned 94 years old. A wonderful, wonderful man. Met Marius and said, I got this idea for this song. I said, what do you think if I dedicate the song to you and the La Select Bar? How would you like that, Marius? And Marius, being a wise West Indian, he's going, doesn't have a clue who Jimmy Buffett is, and going like, and yeah, so what's the catch? And Jimmy goes, the only thing I want, Marius, is a free tab here for the rest of my life at La Select. And the way we used to drink back then, Marius is going, I don't think this is not a good idea, But he shook hands. He really liked Jimmy. He thought Jimmy was very cool because he was cool, and he's a wonderful guy. And they made this deal where Jimmy dedicated the song Cheeseburger in Paradise to La Select Restaurant in St. Bart's, and has a free, till to this day, has a free tab at La Select. And they have good cheeseburgers there too. They really do. And they're only $8. And on St. Bart's, that's a deal. The rest of the place is selling cheeseburgers for $26 in St. Bart's. Oh, and they've kept the price reasonable. So that's...
I like St. Bart's. I mean, I go there every year, once or twice usually, but just long enough to have like a $20 glass of wine. Realize I can't afford it there.
Or an $8 Perrier.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the story of Cheeseburger in Paradise. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. That's the truth. I don't want anybody else telling me this is where Cheeseburger in Paradise is written at.
So cheeseburger for $8 in St. Bart's is the only thing affordable there. Go try it.
Bring your own Heineken.
Yeah.
And here's our Marius Staccoburo with my son in his arms. We talk about the owner of La Select, still going strong. Here's a picture of myself with Jimmy and the kids over in St. Bart's having lunch one day. Jimmy is one of his concerts on the dock over there. He's famous for giving free concerts in St. Bart's. Here's Jimmy with Marius Staccoburo and his son Eddie. Eddie was the first bartender at La Select. He was called Fast Eddie. Here's one of the reasons that I like boats better than flying is because it's an airplane that I crashed going into St. Bart's one year.
You were flying?
No, I wasn't flying it. It wasn't my fault. But it crashed in St. Bart's. So, here's some wonderful pictures of. We talked about Captain Groovy Gray, Jimmy's best friend and confidant and business partner. There's Jimmy's plane right there. And Groovy had a fireworks business over in St. Bart's, as well as a charter plane called Air Mango. So what we did was, when Groovy passed away, at the funeral on the beach there, Jimmy sang a few songs. I had to hold up the stand for him to read the lyrics because Jimmy couldn't remember the lyrics to the song, so I had to sit in front and hold it up. And what we did is we put some of Groovy's ashes in this fireworks display here, and we shot off the fireworks at sunset, and that was Groovy. A fitting end.
No, that's cool, Raj. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah, man.
great talking to
Nice
you.
talking to you, Rick.
Appreciate your time, and I'm glad you guys stuck around. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. And yeah, don't forget, these guys are into real estate and everything down here. If you're thinking about moving down to Paradise or the islands or anything, you can always give them a call, and they'll have something to show you, I'm sure. So thanks, guys. Till next time. Take care.